Hey everybody, Andy here. Let's talk about episode 2 of the X-Files miniseries, The Founder's Mutation. Now this episode, I'll do this just the same as I've done the other ones, or the last one, where I kind of just go through step by step of what the episode, what I saw in the episode and some thoughts along the way. And then about halfway through, or in a point that I think appropriate, I'll kind of say that this will be a spoiler spot, and I'll kind of talk about the ending. So this episode starts off with a man getting off an airplane, and he works for the Department of Defense. He's going to looks like it's a pretty big meeting. So he gets to this meeting, and there's, 10, 12 people there, and they're all talking and trying to figure out what to do with something. I don't know, they're having a business meeting, and this man Sanjay is hearing this buzzing in his ears, and his eyes are turning a little bit red, and there's these birds outside, which is pretty significant, especially later. There's all these black birds outside, ravens or crows, something like that. And he's hearing this buzzing, and it's getting too intense. He can't handle it anymore. So he leaves the meeting, and people think he's having like a panic attack or something. It cuts, and they find him in a closed-off, locked room that has servers for the Department of Defense. He's in there locked in. He's downloading or uploading or doing something on this computer, and you don't know what he does. And unfortunately, in this whole episode, you don't know what he did or was trying to do with these servers and this information. I'm assuming it's going to be significant in later episodes. So he's doing something. He finally realizes or gets enough control of himself that he can write something on his hand. So he writes something on his hand, and then it takes over again, and he takes like a letter opener, which I don't know who has a letter opener anymore these days, especially in a closed off server room, but whatever. And he sticks it in his ear and kills himself. Pretty brutal. Now Mulder and Scully show up to investigate, and while they're there, the Department of Defense are being very... They don't really want to give away information. They won't let them look at anything. They don't really want them... You can tell they don't want them there. So, at some point, Mulder steals Sanjay's phone, and they end up leaving. Mulder calls a phone number on the phone that says secret. I think it says secret. So Mulder takes Sanjay's phone, and he opens it up, and he finds a number in there that says secret. So he ends up calling this number. He meets with the person at a bar or a restaurant or something like that that's at the other end of the number, and he says, "Thank you for meeting me." He says, "Can we meet in a more private location?" So the guy's like, "All right, that's fine. Let's go in the back. I know I got a little place back here." And he goes back there, and I don't really get the point of this scene other than what he says when it at the end of it, but whatever. So he acts like he's gonna go down on Mulder. It's like, okay, and Mulder's like, whoa, you got the wrong idea, buddy. And he goes on this rant how don't suppress your feelings and whatever, and you need to. The truth is in there, and he points to Mulder's chest. And I think they did that whole scene just so he can say, instead of the truth is out there, the truth is in there, and he points to Mulder's chest. Kind of weird, kind of awkward, but I guess clever in a way. I don't know. After all that happens, during while that's happening, Scully's doing an autopsy on Sanjay's body. She finds that what he wrote on his hand, and it says the Founder's Mutation. And I could be wrong, but I believe the Founder's Mutation is pretty much just the first mutation in a the next step of evolution, I think. So if like a new species is created, a subspecies, that would be considered the founder's mutation. At least that's what they kind of make it seem like in this episode. That might be not like what evolutionary anthropologists call it. I'm not sure, but that's what they say it is in this episode. Mulder and Scully end up after that going to Sanjay's house. While they're there, they find out that he has all these pictures of kids with these weird genetic mutations on the wall, and all these files of all these kids and their genetic mutations and experiments that have been run on these kids. So they take the files, and they're about to leave, and then Mulder gets the buzzing sound in his head, just like Sanjay was getting. And he hears, or he doesn't, you can't hear it, but he says in a couple scenes later that he hears, besides the buzzing, he hears "find her." So they leave, they go back to the FBI. The Department of Defense shows up in Skinner's office and takes all the files that Mulder and Scully took of the genetically mutated children. So they take all those files. So you know that there's something goofy going on with the Department of Defense and with these experiments and whatever. After that, Scully says she thinks she knows how to get in touch with Goldman. And Goldman is the one who's running all these experiments on these kids. He's running all these mutation stuff, and he's trying to help all these kids with these weird mutations and these weird genetic diseases. So they go back to her old hospital. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, where she used to work, where she was working in the X-Files movie, the second X-Files movie. And she gets one of the head nurses to contact Goldman, because he donates a lot of money to the hospital, so she has a contact number. Before she goes to contact Goldman, this nurse, Mulder says, "Say founder's mutation," and that's what gets Goldman to accept them meeting together. Before they meet, though, Goldman and Mulder and Scully, there's a teenage girl who's pregnant, who says she wants to get out. She can't take it anymore. She doesn't want to be in this facility. And it doesn't seem important at the time, but it is later. When they're leaving the hospital, Scully seems to get these, or have these. I guess I shouldn't say when they're leaving the hospital. They kind of cut the scene, and then it shows Scully kind of in her apartment or in a hotel room or something like that. And she seems to be dreaming of spending time with their son, William. And it goes through a couple sequences when he's young and getting older and older, and each one seems to be getting a little worse. Like he has an accident, he gets hurt, he looks like he broke his arm at one time. And then the last one, the final cutscene that they show before Dana snaps out of the dream, is William turns around. He's in his room. He turns around and he looks like he's mutated a little bit, or altered his appearance. He looks a little alien. And then she snaps out of it. The next scene is they shows Mulder and Scully are walking down a hallway with talking to Goldman. So they're in Goldman's secret or undercover, top secret, whatever, classified facility where he's doing these experiments on these genetically mutated children, or these strange diseased children. None of them seem to be significant to this episode, but they might be in the future. But there's a range of diseases, all seem very extreme. Right before they leave, this shows a girl that's kind of fighting with a nurse or something like that, and all of a sudden, like, it's right by like a room service type of cart. So there's a cart there with like toilet paper and food and garbage and stuff like that on it. And all of a sudden she's fighting with this nurse, and she's holding this nurse is holding this young girl, and all of a sudden things start flying up all over the place. So she's got telekinesis, similar to Sveta, maybe. Sveta isn't in this episode, so maybe they're showing this that relationship. Maybe, I don't know. So Mulder and Scully are asked to leave, so they do. The next scene is the girl that they met at the hospital earlier. Not the girl that had the telekinesis, the girl that they met that said she wanted to get out of the hospital, who was pregnant. They find out that she was hit by a car and she's dead. And they go to the scene of the crime, or the accident, and she isn't pregnant anymore. So the baby was taken, the fetus was taken. And this becomes significant because Mulder and Scully soon after go to talk to Goldman's wife. So Goldman has a wife who's in an asylum, or in a home, because she had a nervous breakdown. So they go there and they start talking to her, and she starts telling her story of what happened. And this will be a good point for spoilers, so if you don't want to know the end of the episode, you should probably stop here. So at this point, Mrs. Goldman starts telling her story. I don't remember her first name. She starts telling her story, but I guess they're having a party. There's flashbacks. They're having a party, and Molly is young. Molly is Mr. and Mrs. Goldman's child. She's about 3 or 4 at the time. She goes missing. They don't know. She can't find her. She sees that the door is open. They have a pool in the backyard, and Molly's at the bottom of the pool. And so Mrs. Goldman dives in, and Molly is sitting at the bottom of the pool, smiling and breathing water. So right there, you know that Molly has some sort of genetic mutation. She can breathe water. Then Mrs. Goldman has a breakdown because she knows that her husband, he messes with genes or something like that. So she confronts him, and she gets real upset and ends up running away. She drives a car, gets in the car and drives away. She gets in an accident with a deer, and while all this is going on, she's pregnant. She gets in an accident with a deer. She gets out, crawls out of the car, and she starts hearing that buzzing too, just like Mulder and Sanjay did. And she gets a piece of glass, and she cuts the baby out of her stomach. She's told the baby is dead, but she knew it was alive when she pulled it out. You soon find, and then they put her in this facility. So you know that this kid probably has some sort of mutated superpowers too. They go back to the video footage of where Sanjay was killed, or killed himself, and they look at all the video footage of the whole building when what's going on, and they found out that there's this guy in like a room over who seems to react, and he can't see anything, but he reacts to everything that's going on, and to Sanjay's kind of some stuff is happening to him too. So they track this guy down. He's a janitor, and they go to his house, and he's actually not a guy, he's a boy, and his name is Kyle. Long story short, Kyle is the boy that was cut out of Mrs. Goldman's stomach. So it is Mr. and Mrs. Goldman's son. And he's probably 14. I don't know. He looks like a young teen. They decide to bring him to Mr. Goldman for whatever reason. I can't really remember off the top of my head. So he goes there, and he asks to see Molly, and he goes, "How do you know Molly?" And he goes, "I want to see Molly." So Mr. Goldman brings him to a girl, and Kyle knows almost right away that it's not actually Molly. So he runs away, and he's running down corridors, and he finds where Molly is. And Molly ends up being that girl that had the telekinesis, who was fighting with the nurse, who was flipping garbage and toilet paper and all that stuff around at that one scene I was saying. They show Mulder, Scully, and Mr. Goldman running down the hall. Kyle uses his power to break the glass, and then he grabs Molly, and Kyle starts to use his power on Mr. Goldman and pretty much makes, I don't know what he does to him, but they show blood and pouring out of his eyes and ears and everything, and then he pushes Mulder down the hall and knocks him out, and same thing with Scully. And then they go to the next scene, which is later, a little bit later. There's, police all over, and they say Mr. Goldman's eyes popped out of his head. Mr. Goldman. And Mulder and Scully are outside, and they're okay. But the two kids, Kyle and Molly, are gone. They've disappeared. This episode ends with Mulder having a similar experience, like a dream sequence like Scully did with their son William, where he's having a good time with William. They're shooting off rockets, and they're watching Space Odyssey. And then all of a sudden, it ends with Mulder running down the hallway. He sees a light, and it shows William floating in his bed like his sister did in a bunch of the old episodes. And then there's a bright light, and then the episode ends. So at first I thought this was going to be a Monster of the Week episode. That's what we used to call them, a Monster of the Week episode, where it had nothing to do with the main story arc. And then about, halfway through with all the genetic mutation and everything, I think this is going to have a huge part to do with the main story arc. So it's interesting that they have these, I don't know, they seem to be like super powers. They're like genetic mutations, but this girl can breathe underwater, and this guy has telekinesis or telepathy or whatever. I keep saying, I'm probably saying that wrong. And the boy can like manipulate people through sound or hurt people through sound waves. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of weird. It's crazy. It's you don't know if it's alien DNA or what. Oh, one thing I missed was right at the end, Mulder. They took a little blood from Kyle before he ran away to find Molly, and instead of leaving it at the facility, Mulder actually had it. So they're gonna go and test that blood, and I'm assuming they're gonna find out that it's similar to Sveta's and Dana Scully's blood. Anyways, that is episode 2 of the X-Files miniseries, Founders Mutation. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm looking forward to next Monday. So I guess they're doing these Mondays. I thought it was going to be every Sunday, but I guess that was just to get you all ready to watch it. They figured everyone would still be watching TV after the football game yesterday. I don't know. So it's going to be every Mondays at 7 o'clock Central. And I'll be doing the same thing I did here. I'll give a quick 20-minute review of what happens and my thoughts. And so I'll see you next week for episode 3. If you guys liked the episode, you know what to do. If not, I will check you later.